The reason that happens is if you are shooting your own reference, you are essentially just animating yourself if you're not careful. You are animating yourself doing these things. You are animating yourself jumping. You're animating yourself running. And you run a very specific way, and you jump a very specific way, and you gesture a very specific way. Like if I was to animate myself, you'll notice a lot of this going on, a lot of hand gestures, a lot of eyebrow raises. If I just copy that all the time, all my characters would end up feeling the same. So there's a few things you want to do. One is pull from different... Sorry, I've got the hiccups all of a sudden. Pull from different sources. So for example, let's say I'm going to animate a run. Well, I can pull a run from like maybe a sprinter, or maybe a run from a heavier person, a run from a very light and thin person. I look at the body shape of my character and try to find ways of incorporating unique elements to that. Look at just people's runs and look for different ways that people run. So some people run like very tight hands like this. Other people run with their hands straight out. Other people run with their arms out and just flailing. This is the like 1930s damsel in distress style run. The Snow White running through the woods kind of run. There's all sorts of different types of runs. So you have to look for those and pull that inspiration from those so that you're not just animating the same action. Even if you're not shooting your own reference, if you're just animating kind of from your mind, you're going to usually animate the same cliches that your brain thinks of. Your brain only holds so much information and so many like symbols. The symbols in the sense of you think of a run. The run looks a certain way, and that's what your brain holds on to. It's not going to hold on to every single variation of runs. So we have to kind of put ourselves out there to look for those variations. The other thing that can happen is when we're shooting our reference, especially when we're doing acting shots, is that characters just feel the same. So to avoid that, we need to start thinking of our characters differently. Don't just think of, okay, my character has to do this action. Think of, how is this character, this person, going to do this action? What I usually do is think of the adjectives that describe this person. Are they lazy? Are they energetic? Are they bouncy? Are they happy? Are they sad? Angry? It could be, are they boring? Are they the life of the party? Are they arrogant? Just any word that describes these characters, try to think of those. And usually I try to think of three, at least three. And then think, how would a character with those attributes do this thing? How would they do a certain action? A good example is like, let's say Gaston and Le Fou from Beauty and the Beast. They're doing their dance number in the bar, tavern place. And they're talking about eating like 24 eggs, and Gaston throws the eggs and he just eats the eggs like they fall right down his throat. Le Fou tries and he just gets eggs all over his face. They're both doing the same action, throwing eggs and then attempting to eat them. Gaston, who is confident and sure of his skills and actually like he is talented, even though he is a horrible person, he manages to do it flawlessly. Le Fou, who is a fool, his name is literally the Fool in French, fails at it. That Big Hero 6 sitting test, that's one of my favorite tests, and I show this to all my students. A fun exercise is to take a boring action. Now, when I say a boring action, an action that is mundane, sitting down, drinking a cup of coffee, waking up in the morning, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth. Think of something mundane that pretty much everyone does every day. And then try to animate different characters doing that action, but in different ways. So let's actually just show this here. So this is from Big Hero 6. Basically, they were just doing character tests. And the challenge here is the characters walk through the door and then sit down. Now with Baymax, they just had him start here, but then all the other characters after this will come through the door. And I'll just let this play. And as you watch this, just watch the characters. Like, who is this person? How do they do this action that is very different than any other character? And you can see that even though the same action is there, they describe it differently. And that's the key to any interesting animation. An interesting animation doesn't have to be this big, epic, like, spectacle. It can literally just be a character sitting down. But look at how much character, how much personality is in these simple tests. And that, to me, what makes a wonderful and inspiring animation. It's not the technical quality, it's how you can put a character. These are not just rigs, these are characters. And that's very, very important. So you want to think of the adjectives. How do you describe this character? And what would those elements, those adjectives, how does that describe how they would move? And how can you show that to the audience? So, yeah, one of my favorite tests right there. So, yeah, Fred is awesome. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. The big thing is really just thinking of how you would exaggerate those. And Super FPS, thank you so much for the sub. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. 4 months, jeez, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm so easily distracted. Like that test, that is to me a true testament of quality animation because the characters feel alive. I don't care if they're doing 10 flips or just sitting down. If the character doesn't feel alive, it hasn't totally succeeded to me. The moment that they feel like a character, that's it. No matter what they're doing. They could just be sitting there and just like waiting for the bus. And just sitting at a bus stop and not really moving, but if they feel like a character versus another person who's sitting there and they're maybe a little bit more frustrated and tired versus someone else who's just sitting there and just waiting and bored. You can have a whole line of people. Every single one of them can be sitting differently and waiting differently. And that all comes down to posing and describing your character. So I hope that helps. And if you have any other questions on that, definitely let me know. But when I don't follow my reference, I end up messing it up. So you do want to follow your reference. You just want to make sure that you push your reference in the first place. You think of your character and act it out. So if I'm going to reach for something, for example, I could just reach for it like that. But there's no character in there. That's just doing the action. So when you're shooting your reference, you want to think, how would this character reach for it? Are they indecisive? That one. Or are they confident and they don't really care? Walking down the aisle, walk down, boop. Maybe they're more sporty and they push the cart in front of them, grab the thing, and then throw the box of cereal and it lands in the cart. Maybe they're more careful, where it's like pick it up and place it gently in the cart. There's all sorts of different ways that you can do a simple action, and you want to think of that in your reference, and then you don't copy your reference, but you use that in reference as inspiration. And the more you do that, the more you learn your body mechanics, and then from there you can, as you get more experience, you will be able to deviate from your reference and kind of create your own things because you have that experience. But you have to build up that experience first. It would be like baking a cake. If you've never baked a cake before and someone just tells you, bake a cake, where do you start? Just throw some ingredients together and hope it comes out cake-like? Just from things you've seen online, it has icing. Okay, there you go. No, you have to follow a recipe first when you first learn how to make a cake. And probably for the first few times. And then when you go like, okay, I'm going to make a chocolate cake. oh, great, I got that. But now someone asked me to do a vanilla cake. You're not just going to go, okay, I got it. Now you have to read a recipe again. You've got to look at that reference to figure out how to do this type of cake. And then you've got angel food cake, and you've got my brain is not working today. I can't remember my recipes. Milk cake, and then you have red velvet cake. That's the one I was blanking on. You have all of these variations. Yeah, red velvet. Yeah, I love red velvet. And then you have red velvet, and what was the other? Black angel or black? No, you have angel food cake, and then devil food cake. I think it is. It's really good. Which is basically red velvet without the red. But anyway, carrot cake. Oh, carrot cake's so good. So you've got all of these different kinds, and you have to look at your reference, your recipes to learn them. And when you do it the second time, you'll probably follow the recipe again. But after you've made it 3 or 4 times, you know how to do it. And once you've made enough cakes, you start to see the patterns. You start to see what ingredients they all have in common. And you start to learn what makes a cake. From there, now you don't really need to follow recipes anymore. You can just make your own cakes and mix and match and find something that works best for you. That's what animation is. We look at reference, we study it, we learn what those mechanics are. When we do another mechanics, we have to study it again and learn how the body moves, what's happening in this motion. Once we do that enough, you start to build a library of information that you can then pull from and create your own unique motions and your own unique elements. But it all comes from that studying in the first place. So I hope that makes sense. And then Taha on how do I add character to my shot? Like I was saying before, it's think of adjectives. It's the simplest way of doing it. There's other more complex ways. Simplest way, think of 3 adjectives to describe your character. So 3 words to describe your character. And then use that to think of how that character would move. If they're lazy, they're going to be very tired and they're not going to put much energy in. Versus someone who's like full of energy, they're going to be like reaching on the shelves and like bouncy and like maybe skipping and doing a little dance and just kind of light on their feet. And that could be something else. Like you could have someone high energy and light on their feet. They're going to be doing little dance moves versus someone who's high energy but heavy and they move and it's just stomp, stomp, stomp. And they're just like slamming into the ground each time. 2 very high energy characters, but very different motion in there. So those adjectives help a lot. And it's very simple. You don't have to do a lot of trying to come up with a backstory and all of that stuff.